Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Arcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting... Released in 1994 as Final Fantasy III, Final Fantasy VI, as it is actually known, is one of the biggest video games of all time. It's certainly one of my personal favorites, and we're coming up on the release this year of Final Fantasy XVI, truly stretching the definition of the word final at this point. But this is a really a truly wonderful game. I'm very excited to spend time on it, and I'm not doing it alone. I have at least one other Quest member in my party. He is a comedian, a TV writer, a Cowlitz Indian tribal member whose credits include Spirit Rangers on Netflix, Molly of Denali on PBS, and he's the creator of the new Comedy Central digital series Gone Native. Please welcome Joey Clift.
Hey everybody. I'm so excited to be on this, to talk about this podcast, and I am of course here with the third guest on this podcast, which is Ultros, the squid guy.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh no, he's always showing up when you don't want him to.
He's a grumpy octopus. I think the best place to start here, because this game is enormous. This is one of these games that takes, maybe 30 hours to play, start to finish, so we're not going to get to everything in it. There's way too much to do, but we want to hit the highlights. And really, what I want to focus on here, Joey, is you wanted to pick this game as a subject, and I want to know why, because I know it's near and dear to my heart. But tell me about your experience with it.
Okay, God, how do I make this not a 20-hour-long soliloquy? So I growing up was a really big gamer. I started with Nintendo. Like platformers and stuff like that. And then got a Super Nintendo. And, really, I think like a lot of people of my generation just like slowly started to discover, JRPGs. And, of course, like Final Fantasy 2 for, 2 at the time, 4 in Japan numbers. And Final Fantasy 3 at the time, 6 in Japan numbers. We're definitely like at the top of that list of just like games that really blew me away as a kid. Like I remember I specifically rented, there was like a game store near where I lived in Washington State called, I think it was like Children's Company or something like that. That was like a place that sold, just like toys and like random stuff, but they also had like a video game rental section. So I remember renting Final Fantasy 3 from Children's Company and, plugging it in for like a weekend, playing it and just being like absolutely blown away by this world, these characters. I think that I feel like I was probably still in elementary school at the time. I think I might have been like 10, 11, 12 years old or something. And actually, yeah, that sounds about right. And, it just felt imaginative in a way that most of what I did not see, most of what I saw in kids media and the stuff, and even just other video games at that point, I just like didn't really see. So that there was like, and it also had like such a deep and interesting story with like, nuance and gray area with different characters and like such a wide cast of characters that it really just like blew my mind as a kid. Like I remember, like I'm a TV writer now, and like my first piece of like what I would consider to be like creative writing was probably like in the 4th grade, what was essentially just Final Fantasy 6 fan fiction, which was basically just like, oh, what if like Sabin had to fight Ultros, and like what's that as a scene and like dialogue and stuff. And like since then it's just like followed me as this game that I feel like I've probably owned it, I want to say 10 or so different times in different formats over the course of my life. So like renting from Children's Company. Eventually, I like bought a used copy from some game store, and then I sold that to like get an N64, and then I bought it back like 6 months later because I was like, I can't be without this game, and then bought the PS1 Final Fantasy Anthology version of it. I think I bought like the Game Boy Advance version of it, and a ton of other different versions of it, and it is just this like really cool, deep story with like a very classic Final Fantasy play system that just like kind of got my imagination going in ways that I really appreciated.
Yeah, what you're speaking to there is how absorbing this game is. And I felt kind of the same way. I had played Final Fantasy 2/4 before this. Let's lay this out because people are probably really confused if they don't know. In America, we only got what were Final Fantasy 1, 4, and 6. 2, 3, and 5 were only released in Japan, which effed up the numbering over here. So if you hear us refer to it as 3 or 6, it's the same game. But so I had its predecessor. I remember faking sick to stay home from school to play Final Fantasy 2. I faked conjunctivitis because as a kid, like I hated getting stuff in my eyes. Like eye drops were just an anathema. And I thought, if I do this, my mom will never believe I'm faking this. It's too painful and too against my character. So I did it. And I loved it. Final Fantasy 2 is really great. But it feels like that game walked so this one could run. It's so much bigger. It's so much more in depth. The scope of it, the ambition, and the really like stunning plot twists of this thing are I'd put up against any plot twist in any medium anywhere.
Yeah, well, I think that something that also really helped me, get so engrossed in this game is this was in the era of like strategy guides that you could buy, and there was specifically, I'm looking at a photo of it right now. There was the Final Fantasy III Prima Unauthorized Strategy Guide that was this giant, like 500-page strategy guide for this game, where it was very clear that, like, the strategy guide was just making plot stuff up as to like why different, different like pieces of equipment mattered. Like, I think that there's like a section of the strategy guide where they reference what's called like the relic ring, I believe, which is the ring that all of the ghosts on the ghost train are wearing, and their explanation for it is like, oh, this relic ring is the thing that allows them to be ghosts or something. And it's like, is that something that's actually programmed into the code of the game, or is that just something that like the person who wrote this 500-page unauthorized strategy guide just kind of like inserted as their own thing? But still, like, me as like a young gamer at this point saw all of these like just like hooks for interesting stuff that like the game didn't totally spell out for you, like Shadow's backstory and stuff like that. That like, I don't know, it's like it's just like it was such a thick game,
And it gave you that impression too that there was like secrets buried within, and to some degree there are.
Yeah.
But this was back in the era, pre-internet, and very much all about like playground rumors of games.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, did you know if you did this, you could find this secret thing? So like, I don't know, how long did you spend trying to figure out if you could revive General Leo?
You can save General Leo.
Can you?
Yeah,
I'm learning this 30 years later.
Yeah. So this is something that I learned probably 10 years after the game came out from the internet or something. But General Leo, when you're playing as Seals, if you feed him enough fish when you're at the shack, you can like go into the water and get fish. I think you have to feed him like 30 pieces of fish before a certain amount of time, and it's like you don't get anything for saving him other than just he's like, thank you, I'm alive still.
Yeah, that one I did. That was Sid, I think, who you saved by feeding the fish. But there's General Leo is the defector. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. Oh no. Oh no, General Leo. Oh no, that guy's sunk. You can't save that guy.
He's dead. Yeah. He's this. For those who don't know, he's like a general. He defects against the bad guys, and you get to play as him for like one round of a fight, and then he,
and he's so cool
dies.
And powerful, and his like special move is so dope.
Yeah, it gives you every indication that like, well, this can't be the only time you get to do this with him in the game. He must join your fellowship as part of the quest. And nope, like there's no way to bring him back. But yeah, I spent forever trying to figure out like, oh, if you find the right item or talk to the right person, maybe you'll figure out like there's a way to revive him from death. Like, nope. And then they did it again in Final Fantasy VII.
Oh yeah. I feel like I didn't do that as much in Final Fantasy VI. In Final Fantasy VII, I was definitely like, okay, spoilers from Final Fantasy VII, but when Sephiroth murders Eris, like, I remember seeing that scene and being like, well, I'm just gonna restart the PlayStation and just reload my save, and surely there's something I can do to... Oh, nope, there's nothing I can do. She's just gonna get killed by Sephiroth. Got it.
Nope, the plot demands that these characters die. I would say maybe we should set up a little bit about the world of Final Fantasy VI, because I just to let people know kind of what this world is and why we've both obviously glommed onto it and find it so engrossing.
So the world of Final Fantasy VI, I think that like it does a really good job of, I would say like spoon feeding you this really specific imaginative world. So the first things that you see are, I believe, the character of Terra walking in Magitech armor, which is basically like mech armor, toward a town of, I think it's called Narshe, along with two other soldiers. And it's clear that Terra, has been brainwashed, or she's under some control, and she has some magical abilities. But over the course of this, she meets a thief named Locke, who, is just kind of like, your Han Solo-esque scoundrel of this town. And if I remember correctly, Locke basically, frees Terra, and they bolted out of town and are essentially on the run from the Empire, which are the people that originally kind of captured Terra in the first place. And it takes you on this like really great... I mean, the first, I would say like quarter or so of the game takes you on just like, essentially, you're on the run from the Empire, from the Emperor, and from the Empire. You don't really know why Terra is special, other than that she is special and has magical abilities, clearly. It sends you through this really great adventure through, all these like complicated interpersonal relationships. Like I believe that one of the places that you go is the town of Figaro, which is a town run by a king named Edgar. And Edgar is, I would say that he's kind of a reluctant king character, and you learn while in Figaro that the reason that he's reluctant is he actually has a brother named Sabin, who both, like when their dad was sick, their dad who was the king was sick, they had to decide which one of them was going to take over as king. And they legit like settled it with a coin flip. They were on top of the Figaro castle. They flipped a coin, and Edgar, I think Sabin won the coin toss and was like, "I'm gonna go into the mountains. You can be king." And also Figaro Castle is like a castle that's a submarine for sand, and it can tunnel under sand and stuff for some reason. And you meet all these characters in your as you're running from the Emperor, and it creates like such an amazing ensemble of like I would say that like I think that Final Fantasy VI is a game that's kind of without a lead character in a really cool way. Because it's like really every character's story is compelling,
Well, I read in my research on this that when the creator behind it, Yoshinori, I hope I get that right, Kitase, wanted to create a game where every character was the main character, which sounds insane, except I think they pulled it off. Because Terra is your point of view character for the first half of the game. She feels like she's your protagonist, and all the other characters that join the quest are are sidekicks, although they still have interesting stories of their own. And we'll get to it later, but then in the second half of the game, they really let you explore all of these characters individually in depth. And it feels like every one of them has their own arc that is meaningful and thought out. It's extremely impressive that way. It shouldn't work, but it does.
Yeah, and it's just, and it's like, it's so amazing. There are even characters like, I don't know, it's like I'm just even talking to you, I'm like, just like memories of cool plot points are flooding back to me of like, there's like Setzer, the gambling airship pilot who like won his airship in a gambling match, and then, and then his airship gets torn apart in a big plot point at the halfway point of the game. And then he needs to get a new airship that allows you to explore the world. And the way that you do that is like his ex-lover had an airship that's like buried in her tomb somewhere. So you have to like go down there and like essentially, do this like probably like, for this character of Setzer, this very like tearful excavation of like his lover's vehicle that you then use to like save the world. And it's just like, oh, that's like one plot point, and that could be a whole ass movie, you know?
Right, and it's for just that one character who initially, yeah, your first impression of him is like, well, he's just this kind of ne'er-do-well, and not a character you would view with any depth. But sure enough, right, he's mourning the loss of this person who meant so much to him. The whole kind of plot thrust of the first half of the game is that we find out that the Empire is after these magical beings called espers that were once kind of around and have since gone into hiding and exile because when they are murdered or die, their bodies break down into this substance called magicite, which basically, if you put this in your pocket, you will be able to gain magical abilities, which, who wouldn't want to just put a superpower in their pocket? So they're out to destroy this race and take them for everything they've got. And you, as your plucky band of rebels, are out to stop them from doing that. And over the course of the first half of the game, they do some things with the plot that are a little unconventional. So, for example, they split the group into three, and you have sort of three separate stories you can do in any order as they kind of go their own paths and then reconvene to square off against the Empire. And I really loved kind of, that's like the first inkling of like, oh, there's more narrative ambition in this game than you think.
Right.
That we're just going to do this little thing by splitting the group up.
But I think that's something that is so impressive about Final Fantasy VI, and this is something that I didn't really learn until like significantly after the fact, is I think that their development time for this game was like less than a year. Like, I think that they had, like, between when Final Fantasy V came out and Final Fantasy VI came out was like, I think 10 months or something crazy like that. So like, they crammed all of this amazing narrative ambition into a game that they just like cranked out,
I have to assume that shortened development time was only possible because, like, from game to game, the basic gameplay does not
the engine doesn't
iterate
change,
that significantly. Yeah, so I guess that probably freed them up to go like, yeah, we got the thing where you click, attack to attack. They'll make some minor adjustments to that and focus on the plot. But even still, like, you look at the soundtrack to this game, which is, it could be an episode of its own.
Yeah.
It's so good. I mean, this is probably the best game soundtrack ever made.
Oh, yeah. To me, like, I still go back and regularly listen to, like, a symphonic cover of the coin song, which is the song when Edgar flips the coin to decide if he's going to be king or not. And, like, yeah, it's just such a, like... And especially seeing this as like a 10-year-old. So like this is something that's like impressive to me now as a writer. And as like a 10-year-old, this just like blew my mind,
Yeah, the quality of the music here, especially considering you've got the limitations of the Super NES's audio chip. So what they lack in like symphonic fidelity, they have to make up for in melodic quality. Like, it's got to be really catchy. And it is. Like, it's incredibly catchy. There's use of leitmotifs throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's incredibly complex. So, I mean, Nobuo Uematsu, who composed this, he composed several other notable soundtracks from the series. If you ever hear video game music in concert, this is going to be in there. And, like, I actually remember a friend of mine, this was back in high school, he had this 3-disc set of the soundtrack.
I've got that.
And that was the first time I ever... You had it, yeah. I was like, you can buy the soundtrack to this? Holy crap. I didn't think you could do that. It was amazing to me at the time.
Although, I do have to say, not to throw too much shade onto Nobuo Uematsu, but I was blown away by all of his music when I was a kid. I could probably say that he was like one of my favorite musicians from, age 10 to age 20. But then I started listening to classical music, and I'm just like, oh, you just straight up lifted from Beethoven. Like, which, whatever, And I guess it's something that, now that I think about Final Fantasy VI, it does feel like, oh yeah, this is like, there are definitely some elements of this, like the Haunted Forest and the Ghost Train and stuff like that feel like, oh, this is kind of very Miyazaki-esque,
Yeah, there's definitely, there's a feeling of like not just the storytelling style, but yeah, the visual language of this. There is a hint of Miyazaki in there for sure. it's kind of amazing the emotions that they can get out of these sprites.
Yeah.
Their animations are so simple. It's almost like something like Commedia dell'arte puppets. Like the less they can do, the more oomph you get out of them.
Well, yeah, when there's so much that's done with like Shadow's backstory. Shadow's like the mysterious ninja who doesn't really talk. You can find a lot about his backstory by just like if you like go to certain towns and stay at certain inns a certain number of times, you'll see like with him in your party, you'll see like sepia-toned flashbacks of like how he became who he is. And there's like very little dialogue in these scenes. It's literally just like, but you kind of pick it up of like, oh yeah, he was like a troubled kid who had like a friend that passed away, and then like his solution to that was to like try to become a ninja to like kind of avenge his friend. And he didn't really have a lot of friends, in doing that because he didn't really trust anybody with the loss of his friend. But he did befriend this like dog interceptor who, becomes like his companion slash, badass occasional special attack buddy, like during fights and stuff. And it's like, oh, even that like, and this is the era where like the RPGs that this is competing with is like Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, which is phenomenal, but there's not like that much nuance in like Link's story as a character. There's more nuance in like the hidden flashbacks of Shadow, or like the story of like Cyan, of his like entire kingdom getting poisoned and him being the last survivor, than there is in like the first 4 Legend of Zelda games.
Yeah, I mean, they really went out of their way. This is a plot-heavy game, probably more so than any that had come before it, at least that I can remember, on any system. And you talk about that, like that moment with Cyan. Like I was thinking back on the game and like how heavy some of the stuff in this is, considering like how kind of cute it is. Like, wait a minute, there's not one but 2 genocides in this game. There's like attempted suicide. You've got all the stuff that goes with this tyrannical empire. Just really dark stuff. The abandonment of a child is a part of this game.
Yeah, you've got literally the end of the world, which succeeds, and that's the halfway point of the game.
Yeah, we should talk about this, because this is the rug pull I was mentioning earlier that's incredible, because you're building up to this, you think you're playing A New Hope, and it turns out it's The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Where, like, halfway through the game, the quest fails. The end of the world actually happens, and that's the midway point. Like an incredible just twist of like all of a sudden, you're up on this floating continent. This feels very climactic. You're battling this giant weapon, and all of a sudden, like, nope, you've got to escape. Everything explodes, and the world is thrust into this twilight darkness, and the entire landscape is like ravaged to the point where like continents shift. And now you're stuck on an island as you're just one member of this party, not even your main character anymore, a different one, trying to feed, as you said, you're trying to feed your buddy fish so he doesn't die. Like, that's the twist in this cute little JRPG for kids.
You're trying to feed your buddy fish so he doesn't die, and for 90% of kids, you fail and your buddy dies, and he's just dead. Like, it's...
Right.
And yeah, like, this is the era where, like, what this is competing with is like Yoshi's Island. It's like it's such a deep and it's like, I think that for me, at least as far as like American storytelling goes, this is such a landmark game in just like what you can get away with in video game storytelling, and like it's 100% like like Final Fantasy VII, I feel like is held up as so many people's favorites. For me, like Final Fantasy VI blows Final Fantasy VII out of the water just in terms of like narrative and everything that it's trying to do. But like for sure Final Fantasy VII is successful because of all of the cool stuff that they did in Final Fantasy VI to learn that they could do this.
Yeah, you don't get all of the good stuff in Final Fantasy VII, which is a very good game, in its own right. But I think you're right. This is better on, I think, just about every axis that I care about, at least especially in terms of storytelling.
Which is pixels. It's pixels. Is it on a cartridge? Does it have weird bloops and beeps for music? That's all I'm kidding.
That's right. No, I'm born in 1980. That's what matters to me.
Yeah.
You're right. But yeah, that twist in the middle, I just remember being so blown away by that as a kid. Like, I'm like, oh, they're doing something so different than what I would expect, and then to not only just flip the script in terms of having the quest fail, but then to change the narrative structure of the game entirely for the second half, because the second half is not a direct, you're on a quest, here's what you should do next. It's a series of short stories that's all about you getting the band back together, trying to find your folks that have been kind of just tossed to the four winds, and each one of them is its own short story of how you're going to try and get them to come back and recruit them back into the fold. That you can do in any order you want. It was just an extraordinary thing to have that kind of freedom in a game, which would normally just lead you around by the nose from plot point to plot point.
Well, yeah, I feel like but it's interesting because the first third of the game or so is like very on rails. You're just kind of going from town to town, and there's like little side quests and stuff like that here and there. And then there is that weird moment where it's like, oh yeah, like the narrative splits in 3 different directions. So you're following like this group of characters, this group of characters, and this group of characters. And like it's linear, but I think that you do get to pick like which path you want to follow. And then that group gets together, and then you get an airship, so you have a little bit more freedom to kind of do what you want to do. And then the world ends, and then after that, it's just kind of like complete freedom. It's just like, yeah, once you get an airship, you can just kind of go wherever you want. Like, you don't have to get the entire band back together if you don't want to. You need to get a certain number of people back together, so you have parties in the final dungeon where you have like several different groups of adventurers who you can select, different areas at will and stuff like that, or you can select different people to take over at a different time in that final dungeon. But it's like, I don't know, just like what a like permission to swear on the podcast is cool to swear.
Oh, all you want. Yeah.
Okay, it's just like what a like mind fuck of a narrative arc, and what a mind fuck of like playing with even what the structure of the game is,
Yeah, I mean, to trust the player to essentially, have that freedom. Like we said before, that they wanted every character to be the protagonist.
Yeah.
And this is how they do it, where it's like, all right, you mentioned like Cyan, this knight who is sort of the leader of this kingdom. The bad guy poisons all of them, and he's the lone survivor. And in the second half of the game, where you're trying to recruit him, you have to basically go into his nightmare.
Yeah.
And undo his trauma in a literal way by fighting your way through it. And that frees him to finally be free of his guilt and then, join back up with the party. Like, that's like one example of one of these quests.
Yeah, that's like one example of, and I feel like doesn't like Locke, he becomes like the king of like Zozo or something like that, or he becomes like the lead thief in like a crazy town of thieves or something. It's
Strago. I remember. So Strago is this wizard.
Yeah,
he joins up with the Tower of Fanatics, and he's literally just marching in a circle, like brainwashed, and you have to go rescue him there. Do you have a favorite one of these?
Okay, so I think that overall, I'm gonna say, I mean, they're all so good. I mean, Setzer is amazing of like, literally having to confront his, essentially like the ghosts of his past to get the airship of his now dead lover, is really great. I think that if I remember correctly, the opera house, that's in the second half of the game, right? Or is that the first half?
No, that's the first. We should mention it though, because that is a major highlight of the game. That's how you get Setzer, because the
you get Setzer because Ultros has like a bomb or something like that, and he's just like, I'm gonna blow it up, and then like he sets it off, and then all of a sudden Setzer is just like, just kidding, see you later, and then like swoops in and gets you.
Yeah, but the neat thing about this is, so the plan to get they need Setzer because he's got the airship they're going to need to infiltrate the Empire. And so as bait, they have Celis, who is this defector general from the Empire, who happens to be a dead ringer for his Setzer's love.
Yeah.
This famous opera singer. So they're going to say, you go on stage in her place as bait, and when he swings in to come kidnap you, that's our moment to join up with him. And so you have this whole scene play out in this opera house where she just goes out and sings this aria.
This Aria, which is also, for bloops and bleeps on an SNES ship, so beautiful. Like, it's just, and like the lyrics are so great. I don't know. It's, anyway, I could glow about that shit all day, but yeah.
Yeah, no, the Aria di Carattere, I forget what it's called. It has an Italian name. But you're right. Like, they can't have her sing lyrics on the SNES, but the melody is beautiful. Like, it is written like you said, proper classical music. And we'll get to another classical piece at the end of this that's worth mentioning as well. But it's just this great, again, like a narrative swing for like a video game to do a set piece like this. This just didn't happen back then.
Yeah, because like what 10-year-olds are playing this game and being like, oh, hell yeah, an opera house. You know, it's like, it's, yeah. So to answer your question, I think that Celis's story might be my favorite story of the like, but it's tough because it's like, I really like Edgar and Sabin's story is just so like beautiful and also tragic. Like Celis has like, you know, just the really great arc of like she's you know, somebody who was kind of raised as a weapon and trying to decide if she like is capable of more than that and like capable of love and all that, and she realizes that she's capable of love through this huge friend group that she has now. I think that who I view as the main character is, and this is such a nerdy deep cut, but this is why I'm here, is like, you get the Atma weapon, which is like that sword that looks kind of like a lightsaber that you only get one of in the game. And for me, I usually gave that to Celis because I was like, oh, you're the leader of the party now, you know? So yeah, I think that Celis' story is the one that I dig the most. But like, that's not to say that like, it's like Cyan's story is so like tragic and incredible, and he's like literally saved from like the nightmares of his own mind by his friends, you know, and like literally like the death of his people. And like, I don't know, Terra's story is so great in that, like, you know, because she's somebody that I believe is like half Esper, half human, and you like go back to the home of the Espers like as it's getting shut off or something like that, or as it's getting closed off from like, you know, this universe. You know, like Gao's story is so like cool and tragic. It's just like, it's just a, I would say it's a game just like every character a banger. There is not, other than Go-Go. Go-Go, I don't think there's a lot to him, but I don't think there's supposed to be a lot to him. But I feel like every character has this amazing, Go-Go is just like a mime that kind of mimes whatever is around him.
Yeah, Go-Go and Umaro are the two, you know. Although even Umaro has the Sasquatch has a little bit to
Umaro,
it.
he's like the last of his people, like, you know, or he's the last of his kind. It's like, even Umaro has a little bit. Go-Go is the one character that it's like, okay, you wanted another bonus character, sure, I get it, you know?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you in terms of like, especially when the second half starts, yes, you can go in any order, but you do start with Celis on that island and you gather a handful of people. I think, was it Locke, Edgar, and then Setzer, and then you're off to pick whoever else you can find. My daughter's name is Celeste. So
oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, she's a great character, and as you said, she grows so much throughout the story that she is raised basically to be, you know, a human weapon, and finds love with Locke. She figures out that she can be the leader that she was born to be and still be a human. There's so much to her. Do you have a character that was your favorite to play? Setting them for mechanical reasons, or?
Okay, so favorite character to play. I mean, it's tough to say. It's tough to say no to Sabin, who is basically Guile from Street Fighter. All of his moves are like Street Fighter style button presses. One of his moves is a suplex, and you can literally have him suplex a train that you're fighting. So it's like, it's tough to say anybody other than Sabin as far as just like cool character that I'm always just like, oh, Sabin's part of my boy stable, you know, like, and it's so cool. There's like Sabin, like there's this wrestler named Chris Sabin who's considered to be one of the best wrestlers in the world. I'm a big professional wrestling fan. And he's called Chris Sabin in reference to Sabin from Final Fantasy VI, and he even has like a Sabin tattoo on his arm that's really small. So yeah, I would say that, and I think that also with Sabin, it's like, because the mechanics of, you know, this is a Final Fantasy game. It has, you know, random encounters, a fight screen, turn-based combat. You know, you get it.
I was gonna say, if you've never played one of these games, what it actually is it's basically D&D.
Yeah.
It's Dungeons and Dragons with the software doing all of the dice rolling and math for you. That's how it plays.
Yeah, so like I think that with that in mind, I think that like I would say Sabin is my favorite in terms of the mechanics of how he plays. But then in addition to that, I think I really like Sabin because he's also just another character that's like he's like a man that like has lived in the mountains for 10 years and like was just raised to be a fighter, and like it's just like so cool to have him in like a party of people where it's just like, no bro, you got friends now, it's fine. It's like we can suplex that train together. Like the narrative of giving that character a win is like so cool and fulfilling.
I think for me, like my ending party, like the people I would take into the end boss would be it's Celis, Terra, Sabin, and probably Go-Go, just because he could copy anything the other three would do.
Yeah.
That would be my trick for the most damage. And we haven't talked about Kefka yet, which I think we should probably spend some time on him, because he's one of the best villains in any video game ever.
Oh yeah, Kefka, like I say this all the time. Kefka would like eat Sephiroth for lunch. It's like Sephiroth is trying to end the world throughout Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VI, Kefka did it. Like, it's just he's basically the Joker, essentially. He's like a character that like lives on chaos. When you see him at the start of the game, he's, essentially just like, he's literally like the court jester of the Emperor, basically. And then he slowly like gathers power. He's the person that poisons Cyan's kingdom. Basically telling the soldiers, hey, you should just like poison their water supply. So you see him develop this like really great cruelty streak. And then eventually when you have the halfway point where you're supposed to stop Kefka and the Emperor, you're on this like floating island that's above the world, and that's where like these 3 Esper statues are that are essentially like the nexus point for like all magical energy in the world. And he basically like jumps in between them to kind of like absorb all the magical energy of these Esper creatures, and becomes like literally a god who you have to fight at the end of the game.
This is the first one of like that's a JRPG trope for sure. Like, hey, let's go kill God or a god. Yeah. And this is the first one of those. And you're right. Like he starts off the game. Everything in the plot is telling you this is the scrub who you're gonna, he'll be a boss that you fight like a quarter of the way through.
Yeah.
And then something else will happen. Especially with like Final Fantasy II, which like ends with a boss that like you've never met before. Just like, hey, turns out there's another bad guy you never heard of. Go kill him. And so you don't expect anything out of this guy, and then you watch him literally, massacre an entire nation basically by poisoning them all. And you go, oh, this is the Joker, right? This is very much in line with the Joker.
Yeah, this guy does live in a society.
Yeah. And I love that like the Emperor for a while, like he says, like, he went rogue. He went off script. So we've put him away. We put him in lockdown, and we're going to try and broker a peace now. And that turns out to, of course, to be a lie. And then, so he lets him back out, and then he ends up kicking the Emperor to his death off the floating continent. It's like, nope, you played with fire, you got burned. Like what is everything about him is so untrustworthy and so treacherous. It's great.
Yeah, well, it's also to see like, that guy become a god and recreate the world in his like chaotic image, which is what you're spending the back half of the game traipsing through. I gotta say, I'm such a big Final Fantasy VI fan that when Final Fantasy VII came out, I was hugely disappointed because it was like, oh, Final Fantasy VI put such a level of expectation as to how good this is supposed to be, and it was like fine, but it was also just like, oh, this isn't as good as Final Fantasy VI. Probably one of my like proudest moments of my early 20s is I was at and I think that this speaks to how I feel like JRPG and video game fans of our era, this is kind of like a constant Star Trek versus Star Wars argument, which is better, Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy VII? And I feel like, old heads that grew up on Super Nintendo RPGs are going to say Final Fantasy VI, whereas people were like their first RPG ever was Final Fantasy VII are probably going to say Final Fantasy VII. But I was at the Penny Arcade Expo, one of the first ones in the mid 2000s, and there was a panel of like developers talking about game development. And during the Q&A, I just asked like, "Hey, just out of curiosity, which do you think Final Fantasy VI is better or Final Fantasy VII?" And it started like a screaming match level argument between these developers that was like, because somebody was just like, "Oh, as we all know, it's Final Fantasy VII," and then somebody was like, "No, it's Final Fantasy VI," and they were like, "What did you say?" And then just like, it was just one of the things where it's like, I started this huge bicker fight between these game developers, and I was just like, I'm out, I did it, you know? And even the audience members were yelling at each other. It was the nerdiest
the nerdy
tussle that I have ever caused.
I mean, it is a tough call. I like I said before, I think I come down on the side of 6 being better. Even though 7 is, like I said, it's very good. Like, it's no slouch. But this does so much more. And a big part of it is Kefka. I think he's so much more charismatic.
Right.
Sephiroth is a charisma vector.
Yeah, I think that my problem with Sephiroth is I feel like Sephiroth was specifically designed for, like, goth kids to like. Like, he was, like, I feel like, yeah, Sephiroth's like an edgelord in a really specific way, whereas I don't feel like Kefka was designed to sell T-shirts, you know? Also, another really cool Final Fantasy VI kind of thing that exists beyond it is Asuka, who's one of the best female professional wrestlers, I mean, probably of all time. She wrestles for WWE. She's like a multi-time world champion. Her entrance robe is like flat out a recreation of Kefka's robe, and it's like not something that they call out on commentary, but it's like, if you're a fan of Final Fantasy VI, you're gonna immediately look at that and be like, oh yeah, that's for sure. She just sent a designer Kefka's robe and said that, you know?
Well, I love that he recreates the world in his image, which is just a twisted, hellscape. Everything about the world of ruin, as it's called, is, just, there's nothing to like. Like, it's not, okay, you went for all this power, and this was the goal. This is what you wanted to do. This is how you wanted it to be.
Right.
Because he just sits on top of his tower, basically like frying people, smiting people as he sees fit. That's what he's been doing for a year.
Right.
When the game picks back up.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, and there is this feeling of like, why, I don't know, you happy, Joker? You won. Clearly this isn't giving you fulfillment.
Well, it's like, what does he say in The Dark Knight, right? I'm like a dog chasing a car. I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, totally.
There's a little of that. And when you face him, of course, he's built this tower of garbage that he sits on, just made of like the detritus of the world. And you get up, you fight all these various things to get up there, and Dancing Mad starts, which is sort of like Uematsu's version of Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D.
Yeah.
One of the most ambitious tracks of the 16-bit era. I mean, kind of nothing can touch this thing. It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it is just like, I don't know, every aspect of this game is just like I said, it's wild that they made this in like 10 months, you know?
I love the thing that you fight before you get to him. It's just this like weird, twisted... it's almost like a gargoyle, but like a genetically mutated, fused teleporter accident of a gargoyle. Like, it's just all this different like creatures and beings like fused together into this coiled up spire. It's hard to describe if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, that's his, like, because it's like most Final Fantasy bosses, it's like there are multiple stages to him. You basically start at his base, which is like, yeah, this weird gargoyle thing, and then once you get up a level, you're fighting like, different versions of him that are like kind of the second level. and the top of him is like, oh, he is Jesus, you know?
Well, he's literally like drawn as like this angelic sprite with these huge wings. Behind him are these god rays coming through the clouds. Like the religious iconography is really
Oh
awesome.
yeah, for sure. You're fighting the Pope. That's basically what they're trying to pull.
There's still many games where you fight a pope or a god now. It's nice. You've got Sephiroth becomes a god. I think you fight several gods in Final Fantasy X. There's Tales of Symphonia is another one. Like there's a lot where it's just like time to kill deity.
Yeah, it is. That is like a very like I never really thought about it that way, but that is like a funny JRPG specific, at least from like that era, is like, oh yeah, you're always. It's like the final boss is your job. Your job is to kill God. You're killing God right now. You know, like Lavos in Chrono Trigger. Yeah, like yeah. It's like Lavos in Chrono Trigger is basically God, Gygas in Earthbound is basically God. I mean, like, have you played Mother 3?
I have not. I know.
Oh, you got so like
I
had not played it until honestly like last year. I finally bought a Nintendo DS and a hacked cartridge of Mother 3 with the fan translated English translation, and like it came out in 2003, so this is 19 years after the fact, and like God, what a game! And like the ending is so incredible. The story is great. Yeah, I don't know. Just like JRPGs are great. It's just I appreciate the art form of that.
Yeah, and again, it's this storytelling medium that allows them to take these big swings up against these sort of seemingly cute backgrounds, which like that juxtaposition shouldn't work, but it somehow it like the whimsy of it makes the tragedy feel that much stronger. I don't know how they pull that off. It's kind of a magic trick.
Oh yeah, totally. It is a weird, and it's something that like, it's one of those things where it felt so, it felt so like alien to me as like, a 10-year-old. It felt so like imaginative to me as a 10-year-old. And it's something that like, oh, as an adult, I'm realizing like, oh, this is heavily inspired by like Japanese culture and Japanese archetypes. We mentioned like Miyazaki as a touchstone for it. Like, you could definitely look at espers as like, oh yeah, they're basically kind of like Shinto deities. Like it is, it's like when you like think about the culture that it came from being like, JRPG, it's like it starts to make a little bit more sense of like, oh no, this was inspired by the culture that it's from. I just am not part of that culture. So to me as a 10-year-old, it felt like, oh, I just don't know what any of this stuff is, and it feels so fresh and new. But still, like, what a home run on what it was trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's almost like Japanese culture and Western medieval fantasy. It's almost like chocolate and orange. Like, oh, those two things go together really well. And I'm not sure why. You look at like Dark Souls, like all the From games, and it's like that's the same thing. You've got a Japanese developer doing their spin on like Lord of the Rings type fantasy, and the end result is something so like fresh and interesting and vibrant. And I don't know what to attribute to that to other than just like, oh, this is a combination that otherwise wouldn't exist.
Well, yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, and there's like so many characters in this that like kind of fit the Han Solo archetype of like the rogue with a heart of gold. It's like Setzer's kind of that. Locke is kind of like that. I feel like there's a lot of other characters in this that kind of like fit that mold. And it just I don't know, it's just
Edgar is one of those too.
Edgar, like Sabin on some level. It's just I don't know. It's just cool shit. I just love it. It's so great.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking for almost an hour, and it's just like it's been all gushing, and it almost feels like describing a dream to somebody if you've never played the game. It's hard to coalesce the thoughts about it, but there's so many times where the game sort of just says we're going to go in a surprising direction, and they succeed. Like all of these big swings they take, like they nail, and it's one of those things that, like every time you come to a new place. You go into a new situation in the game, it's a win. Like it's a surprising, heartfelt thing. It's an interesting narrative twist. It's just a cool set piece. But they're constantly giving you something that's way more interesting than just the average. Like go into forest, fight monster. Yeah. There's always something happening that's like making it compelling.
Well, yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, and that is something that's like. I don't know. I think it kind of speaks to the creativity of like specifically this genre of or this generation of video games in that like they did this with like 16-bit sprites. Like it's like the technical limitations were huge, and there's definitely a version of this that could have been like, Final Fantasy 1 was like basically just like, yeah, go into the woods, fight monster, go into a castle, fight stronger monster, get stronger, fight the biggest monster, you win. And like something that's really cool about like, Squaresoft at the time is like, I feel like every game that they made in the 8-bit and 16-bit era, they tried to like say, okay, yeah, we get it, turn-based combat, random encounters, blah blah blah. What like interesting or cool thing that we can do beyond that? They never like rested on their laurels,
Well, it's funny because I tried to figure out why is it called Final Fantasy to begin with, and the story. There's two stories. I don't know which one is true. Maybe they're both a little true. One version of the story was they bet the company on Final Fantasy 1, so they called it Final Fantasy, thinking, well, if this fails, it's the one we go out on. And the other is the creator of the series, was it Sakaguchi, said it wasn't so much the company, but him personally. He felt like if it failed, he would have quit the industry and done something else. But it kind of speaks to that sense of like every game in the series, at least up to a certain point, does feel like if this is the one we go out on,
yeah,
we want to go out big,
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that about that. That's really cool.
The ending of this thing is really crazy too because it's like a half an hour long, which never happened in games of this era. You get all the leitmotifs from the music coming back as all of the characters, escape the now crumbling tower. And like each one is like a check-in, again, like putting another capstone on their dramatic arc as they go out. It's so efficient and so just incredible to watch. And it felt like Return of the King. Like, oh, more endings. It's still going. I'm the luckiest boy in the world.
Oh yeah, the final track on that 3-disc Final Fantasy soundtrack is like 24 minutes long, and it's because that's just what plays over the entire ending. And like it's so great. It is such a great like capstone on each character's journey. It's also like in Final Fantasy VI fashion, super dark when Shadow is just like, leave me. I'll die as the tower collapses. Go, Interceptor, go. And then Shadow just like dies in the collapsing tower. Like
I thought it was implied he made it somehow, but I can't remember if there was like a little touch at the end to suggest maybe he got out.
Yeah, but there was still that moment of he made the choice to stay. Like
he doesn't have much to live for. I liked they even did a thing where like, so for example, the Shadow can die on the floating continent. You're supposed to like wait for him to then rescue him. I wasn't sure you were supposed to. The first time I played the game, I was like, we got to get off of this thing before time runs out, which meant I left him to die on the continent, which meant he was not available for the second half of the game. So when you get to the end, for any character you did not bring back, when you're getting the band back together, they just sort of show something. They have something else to show you. I think for him, it was just like, you saw like the dog in like the town where you found him or something. It was like vaguer than actually watching a little moment with him.
Wow. Holy shit. I didn't know that. That like, because look, I'm a good person. I saved everybody. I was like, Shadow, I'm not leaving you on this floating continent, buddy. So yeah, now I kind of want to go back, and I'm sure on YouTube there's probably some supercut of like all of the deaths of the Final Fantasy VI characters you didn't save.
Yeah, I think, like I said, technically you only need 4.
Yeah.
They make you bring 4 into your party. You don't have to save anybody else if you don't want to. I'm sure there's a version of the ending where, it's just, nothing but like, sad slideshow for everybody else. It was just so impressive to me that like, and then after they do that, there's still more. Like there's still like they're flying away. There's all these moments, and they do give Terra the hero moment at the end of like, is she going to survive because magic is leaving the world? She's half magical, so she's in theory going to die. Luckily, she does not, and she gets to stand on the bow of the ship with her magic hair blowing in the breeze. Like it's really cool.
Yeah. Just I also really appreciated. This is one of the first JRPGs that, like, at least I remember, where when you're flying around on the airship, at any point you could press like the Y button or something like that, and you could just like walk around the airship and just see all of these characters that are in your party, because your party gets huge. I mean, like, I think that there's like 15, 16, 17 playable characters in this game that like make up your party. And, at any point when you're flying around the airship, you could just stop and then just go and be like, oh, where does Shadow hang out in this airship? Oh, he just kind of hangs out in the boiler room. Where's Setzer? He's like piloting it. Where's Locke? Oh, he's trying to like hustle Cyan in the, in the gambling room or something like that. Like, just like there are so many character touches that really make each character feel like a lived in and fleshed out part of the story, down to like, oh yeah, if they were on this big airship, like, where would they be? What would they do? Who would their friends be? In a way that was just like, oh, up until that point, I'd never seen that before in a video game.
Yeah, like I said, there's really no other game before this that I can think of that invests this level of humanity into their characters. And I'm sure a lot of credit goes to, I forget who was responsible for the English localization, but boy, they just nail making every single one of these characters feel so different, unique, and deep in a way that, in theory they shouldn't, because they're cute little sprites.
Hey, okay, so like I've got a question for you, Doug. So
Mhm.
if you were a character in Final Fantasy VII, I don't want to know who you would be, but where if I press triangle on that airship, who would you be hanging out with?
Sorry, 7 or 6?
6.
Oh, 6. Okay, all right. Who would I be and where would I be hanging out?
Yeah, on Setzer's airship, where would you be? Who'd you be hanging out with?
I would be hanging out with Mog, the Moogle, because he's the wisecracking one, and I want to be around like the funny people. He just seems like he's a lot of he's got that kind of like mischievous energy, and I like him. There's just an interesting character design on him as well. So I would definitely hang out with Mog, and probably Setzer or Locke. They seem like they're kind of cool to be around.
Yeah. No, I get what you're talking about. It's like, I was gonna say probably the same. I'd probably be around the roulette table with Setzer, Locke, and Edgar, just because, like, not necessarily because they seem like the coolest people to hang around, but of everybody on Final Fantasy VI, they seem like the least bummers to hang around. It's just like Cyan would be like,
we've talked about a lot of tragedy.
Yeah, Cyan would be like, my wife is dead. Like, Shadow would be like, I'm not talking to you. I only talk to my dog, and only about how I want to die. Like, Mog, I also feel like would probably be like a pretty fun hang. Gao would probably be kind of messy. Umaro might be
Tarzan
fun.
boy, yeah.
Yeah. Umaro might be fun because he's just like a Sasquatch. If he's like a happy Sasquatch, that would be fun. Go-Go would probably be annoying because he would just be trying to imitate you. I think that, like... And I feel like Sabin is probably really cool when you get to know him, but he probably is, like, a bit too standoffish to, like, really want to, like, hang with,
Yeah, he would be a little bit... I mean, like, he lived in a mountain alone by himself for a while. That does things to you.
Yeah, I feel like Sabin and Seals would probably get along really well because both of them are just like, we've only trained in fighting,
We haven't talked about Strago or Realm much. They were all like, so at the end of the game, you have to divide your party into 3, and you can have 4. So that's 12 characters, which I believe leaves 2 left over that you don't use. And Strago and Realm were always the 2. I was like, I have no use for you 2. You're not that strong as party members, so you get to sit back and watch us save the world.
Yeah, Strago and Realm were fine. They were like, it was basically like an old wizard guy, and then Realm was a essentially just like Strago's, presumably kid that could like paint things that came to life. They were fine. I didn't hate them. They just kind of were there.
I just found them, they're fine as characters. I just found them less useful mechanically, so they stayed behind.
Right.
Other people did more damage.
Yeah, for sure.
I know there's so much more we can talk about with this game. I know we're running long on time here. But anything you feel, I mean, this game is, as you've said, this stayed with you your whole life after you played it. You talked about it influencing your writing and everything else. What is it you think that's at the core of this game that makes it worth, ranking so highly among games and remembering all these years later?
So, I mean, I think that it's a case of a lot of people who are like masters of their craft just like sinking 3-pointers for 30 hours, you know, for 30 hours worth of gameplay. You know, like this, like it's like the soundtrack is like so incredible. The you know, the art, even though it's pixel art, is so incredible and memorable, as well as like the concept art of these characters. It's like in the instruction manual is just like so amazing and cool to see. You know, like I think like the writing is so great, like the characters are so like they still pop for me. Like I haven't played the game in like probably 10-15 years, but like these characters still pop for me as, you know, me remembering a lot of major plot points for them. I think that what overall I really appreciate about this game is just like, and you said this a couple times, it's just like the balls to like just go for it. Like, yeah, we're gonna have a weird sad opera scene about this, like this you know, like gambling airship captain. Like, yeah, sure, we'll have like in this game, presumably for children, we'll have somebody poison an entire kingdom, and the only survivor who is for sure filled with PTSD joins your party. You know, like I think that it's just like the guts to do all of that stuff, and to really like, you know, like you said earlier, to like give all these characters just like real humanity that, like I said, like inspired me to write like Final Fantasy III fan fiction when I was 10, which then convinced me to like become a TV writer. You know, it's just like, I don't know, it just whatever they did, just like chef's kisses all around. You know.
Yeah, I think sinking 3-pointers for 30 hours really describes what that feeling of playing this game, because every time they do something, it's like you're about to hear a new musical track, and it's just a wonderful piece of music you're going to remember every time you hear it. You're going to encounter a strange monster or creature, and the design is going to blow you away. You're going to meet a character who might seem initially, you know, maybe surface level, and you'll find out they have an entire tragic backstory. And then you're going to inhabit this world in 2 phases, you know, for a very long period of time, and feel kind of immersed in it. That it feels, you know, as real as something made out of pixels in mode 7 in 1994 can feel. And it's just, I remember being young and seeing this game and going like, I didn't think games could do this. I didn't know you could do this in a story, you know. I've always been interested in video games as storytelling mediums, and like, so like we watched The Last of Us on Sunday, and I like The Last of Us. It's a really good game. It's a really good story, and it works as an adaptation because it basically, you know, it's very cinematic already. But while I was kind of getting into that for this week, I was playing the Stanley Parable, which, if you've never played it, is like, here's how a game can use the medium of gameplay to fuck with you,
right,
and do things that, you know, only you could do with this medium. And Final Fantasy VI is like, we're using the medium of games to do something that only games can do, and do it in a different way that still feels cinematic and epic and profound. It's this just kind of a wonderful home run.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like, and that's it's why it's like a little bit of a bummer to me that Final Fantasy VII gets so much, I would say, cred and attention when it comes to remakes and stuff like that, because it's like a Final Fantasy VI movie would be amazing.
It'd be very hard to adapt, but yeah, you know, I thought it might make a good like anime series or something.
Oh yeah, like this would be a really great like limited, you know, 8-episode series or something. Or it's like a 2-season series where season 1 is the end of the world, and then season 2 is them figuring out the thing.
I would love to see it. I think it's worth doing. I'm sure Square is, you know, counting their Final Fantasy VII remake money and going, should we do 6? Should we do 9? You know, these were good.
I mean, 9 was really good. I feel like they're counting their Final Fantasy VII remake money and thinking, should we do another Final Fantasy VII remake?
Yeah, well, they've split that into, you know, I guess however many, 3 games or something they're going to take to do it. But I don't think you could remake. I think, you know, if you tried to do this the way they did with 7, I actually liked the 7 remake. I enjoyed it. I think you would lose a lot of what makes this special. You'd lose the pixel art. You'd lose you'd add in vocal tracks with voice actors, and it just would not feel as special. I bet a lot of this dialogue, as cool as it is, it feels good in your head. It probably sounds weird if you say it out loud.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know if it would work, but
I think that Cree Summer could make "You're a Spoony Bard" sound cool. I know that was from Final Fantasy IV.
But yeah, it is a memorable line. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there are very talented voice actors who could do it. I feel like what makes Final Fantasy VI special is what's already there.
Yeah.
I think you can only go down from there. It's kind of the way I look at it.
No, I get that.
So, Joe, I just want to say thank you again for coming on the show. It's been so much fun to revisit this game. I love it so much, and I know you do too. Is there where would people find you if they want to find your good works?
They can find me in the boiler room of the Blackjack airship, hanging out with my good friend, my good sad friend Cyan. Now you can find me on Twitter at Joeytainment. You can find me also on TikTok at Joeytainment, on Instagram at Joey Clift with like 5 or 6 eyes. I'll probably start a Mastodon or a Hive or whatever the popular one is that people are going to. You can probably find me on at Joeytainment on those. And then I would say things to promote. I'm a writer, consulting producer on Spirit Rangers, which is a really good kid show that just came out on Netflix recently. I created the digital series Gone Native, which you mentioned, which we just released our final episode on Comedy Central's animated YouTube channel a few days ago, so check all of those out. And then I have a short film called My First Native American Boyfriend that I just finished its festival run. You can find that on Vimeo. But if you follow me on social media, you'll be able to check all this stuff out.
Great, and you should, because this is wonderful stuff. If you do a quick admin on our side, if you like the show, of course, do what you do when you like podcasts. Go review them highly, tell people about them, and of course, you can find us on Twitter for as long as Twitter is worth mentioning at NostalgiumPod. We're also on Instagram for now, and we'll probably migrate over to Mastodon or Post or whatever lifeboat we need when Elon Musk burns the thing to the ground.
Yeah, whichever one wins.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever's left after the world burns down, that's where we'll be. And until next time, that's one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcade. All right, well, we let Joey go, but I did want to at least read some feedback, which we had on Final Fantasy VI that I wanted to get to, because it's always good to have some feedback from our listeners. This is awesome. So the first one I wanted to read was from David Jackson. He wrote, I played the Game Boy Advance version as my first experience with the game and immediately got hooked by the plot and what an evil bastard Kefka is, which of course we covered. And then at the point where things may start to drag in really long games, for the first time in my history playing games, the villain wins. After that, the getting the band back together story kept me going even longer. I really love the game despite getting to the final area twice and never beating it. I'm looking forward to finally beating it sometime soon. It's a long one. There are definitely some spots towards the end where you can feel like I want to give up. And I don't feel like grinding forever and ever to build up my stats to be able to get there. There are things the game gives to you to try and make it easier. But yeah, I do think it is worth the end. You can always, of course, the secret ending to any game is to go on YouTube and just watch the ending, which this game has a great one, as we talked about. So thank you for writing in, David. And I have one other one. This is from online, so it's just a handle, but it's It's Rex is the handle, which I think is really fun. Wrote in, short Final Fantasy VI story. When it was finally released in the USA, my sister and I were champing at the bit for it. We bought it at Walmart, and when we got it home, we discovered that someone had re-shrink wrapped it, and there was a real old copy of Bubsy the Bobcat inside. They exchanged it for us, luckily. Yes, that is the correct response, is to get it changed immediately, because Bubsy the Bobcat I had. It was interesting but terrible, and nowhere near the quality of Final Fantasy VI. Bubsy's Bubby's a real nadir for games and platformers. It's pretty awful. But that's the feedback we got. Again, if you have feedback, please send it to @NostalgianPod, and we'll read it on the air. So thanks so much for sending that in.
Okay, kid, show me what you got. Yeah, right. Next. Yes. Next. Ooh, scary. Next. Next. Next.
Final Fantasy III. Do you have what it takes? Final Fantasy III from Squaresoft.
Next.